What's up, everybody? Nick Powles, publisher of 1851franchise.com, here with another episode of Meet the Zor, where we introduce you to the stories of franchise brands and hopefully guide you on your journey to becoming a franchise owner. We are talking Barmetrix coming up next. All right, Ray. So when we've talked with franchise buyers, they make it very simple. There's tons of people that talk about fluff around it, but it's like, what's the culture of the business that I'm buying into, and what's the business opportunity? So we're going to start on the culture piece, and that's you and your backstory. So how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Yeah, I would say accidentally is probably a good word to use. It's sort of like, lines up with my fall into sort of entrepreneurship and owning business and getting out of the corporate world. My background was in software engineering. I worked for a large software company. Graduated out of college, got involved in a company. The dot-com bubble came and went in around 2000. And so me and many other engineers got a bit of time off as a result of that. And then I sort of kind of meandered, did a little bit of traveling for a while. I got involved. And then I was in Sydney, Australia, and I was doing contracting and technology. And I kind of realized I didn't really want to kind of continue that path. So I always had kept my eye out for opportunities. And it's kind of what I always say, there's kind of different levels of, entrepreneurship, right? I've often seen the discussion about, is franchising considered entrepreneurship, by pure definition. And in my thoughts, there's just different levels, right? Those guys that will start up multiple different businesses and have no fear whatsoever of the risk involved, but they're kind of born to do it. And then there's kind of maybe the franchise world where it's kind of packaged up for you and you can follow a proven tested path. And I sort of kind of fell in between, where I looked at, I was looking for opportunities. I didn't want to start something completely from scratch. And so when I got involved with Barmetrix back in 2003, there was a small consultancy business servicing bars and restaurants in Sydney, Australia. But we had, the model was proven there. We had a really good team, and there was kind of unlimited opportunity. So I got involved that time. I kind of said, hey, look, I can step out of the corporate world. I was sort of younger and single. I didn't have any kind of responsibilities. And so I could take the hit financially for a while. And then through the business in Sydney, we opened up in the UK first through a licensing agreement. And then my old business partner was Canadian and he had contacts in Canada. And so it made sense to move the business or expand the business into Canada, starting in Toronto initially, then to Ottawa and then to Vancouver. So we started franchising the business in Canada back in 2005. And then the US market was always sort of the big market for us. So we moved to the US in 2008 at the beginning of the financial crisis, a good time to be trying to relocate in a new country. And so I think we committed a lot of the same mistakes that a lot of new franchisees make. We just didn't know. We knew it was probably the best vehicle for us to use to expand, but we didn't have any franchising experience. So, that's kind of how I fell into it and got involved with it. I was responsible for the technology part of the business in the early days. And then we started franchising and it was through experience, really, kind of then got very comfortable and very familiar with the whole franchising way of doing things. So that's kind of my meandering path into the franchise world.
All right, there's things that I want to unpack there, but let's flip over to the business side to frame it. What is the business opportunity?
So what we do is we work with bars and restaurants to help them squeeze as much profit and revenue from their bar program, right? And so it's different from market to market, but let's say looking at the US market, which is probably where the biggest opportunity lies, most bars and restaurants are losing 20 to 25% of their inventory of their product every week. And so the promise that we make is to say, hey, look, you're losing 20 to 25%. We can show you, where you're losing and what you're losing, but on average it's 20, 25%. We'll work with you to bring that 20 to 25% loss down to less than 5%, right? And by doing that, it drops their cost of goods down substantially. And by dropping their cost of goods, it will pay for our service, multiple times over. Usually I would say there's a minimum 5x return on the cost of our service. And as well as the getting a service that pays for itself, they get a huge amount of data that they've never seen before. They get transparency in the business. They know if staff are doing the right thing, if the staff are pouring properly, if they know their recipes, if there's issues with the point of sale system, if there's issues with the equipment they're using, whether that's draft equipment or wine glasses or shot glasses, whatever that may be. Full gamut of data and purchases and sales and inventory. We're able to consult and analyze and identify very specifically what are the opportunities behind the barrier. So that's what it is. It's it's data analytics at the end of the day, on top, combined with coaching.
And then are you a technology provider for how you're measuring those metrics too?
Yeah. So we've built. So when I got involved, obviously in the early days, my background was in technology. So I was involved in building the earlier versions of the product. So we built all our software in-house. Over 20 years, we've evolved it massively, taking it from an old Access database to now it's kind of cloud-based and using sort of the latest in industrial barcode scanners and implementing some AI technology and making it as mobile and as quick and as efficient as possible to collect the data. Because that's ultimately how we make our money. It's how quick we can collect the data, how quickly we can analyze it, and how quickly we can get a report back out to a client. So all the tech is our own proprietary, and we provide all the franchisees with that tech.
Number of locations current?
We have 35 different locations, so 35 cities, and that's operated by 23 different operators.
And how many restaurants, active restaurants, how many current clients do you have collectively among those?
We're just over 1,100 bars and restaurants across 6 different countries.
Okay. And how much average savings are you giving back to these restaurants?
It's a tricky one to answer just because so if you look at a transaction where it's what we can show at a minimum is their cost savings, right? Because you can see their cost of goods dropping. What's less predictable is if you look at a transaction whereby somebody gives a free drink to a customer, right? And maybe they're looking for a higher tip, right? Which is not uncommon. In that situation, right? If they give away a free bottle of beer, cost of a bottle of beer, let's say it's $1, right? But they would have the retail cost of that or retail sale of that is $10. In that transaction, if you're just looking at cost, we're saving if we saved them that transaction, that's $1.
Yeah.
But the real difference is, and what's more difficult to calculate, is the fact that they lost the $1 plus the $10. So the total loss in that transaction is $11, right?
Right. Yep.
That $11 is harder to predict because you don't know. We can't predict where the loss is happening. We don't know whether it's stuff being given over at the bar and somebody was going to pay for it, which is going to be a percentage of the situation, or whether it's going out the back door, right? The closer to the back door, like out to the stock room, closer the cost, closer to the bar, closer to retail. But that's what I was saying. I would say, look, we would look to provide a minimum of a 5x return on investment.
Okay. So stay on that. So on cost of goods sold, how much should that percentage drop?
Usually it would drop. So for every 4 to 5% in variance, that usually equates to about a percentage in cost of goods drop. So most of our places, and I see the data every day because we have a corporate store here in Washington, D.C. So I see the data and from new clients coming in, we're typically dropping anywhere from 3 to 5% cost of goods, depending on how bad the situation is for the client. But we're looking at a 3 to 5% drop in cost of goods.
Okay.
So, on average, our service might cost about 10 grand on average per year. We have some places that pay us $50,000 per year because they're bigger venues. We quote based off the time. But those places, if I'm looking to sell them for $10,000, I just did we call it a discovery meeting with a client. The opportunity for them is about $130,000 to get a return on a $10,000 investment, right? So it's on a case by case scenario, but on average, I would say any business that's doing close to $1 million per year in beverage should be looking to get back 6 figures if they take our advice and take our coaching.
Okay, this is where I'm going to turn this into a coaching call.
Okay.
Because you and I have talked before. I see magic in what you do. Like, it's very easy for me to see the business and the problems that you solve. So let's start with, I'm going to work backwards because we start with your franchise story.
Yeah.
I was tired of corporate America. I decided to take things into my own control. And so if you think about who your franchise buyer is, that's step one. Like the bulk of people that are going to go into hospitality consulting, they're going to say, I'm tired of doing X for my boss. And so like I've heard people talk about like the 200% raise, because really you get your time control back and you get your money control back. And so when you think about who are you selling to, basically you're telling corporate America, like when you're done and you're ready to take control, we have a business that you can get into. If I flip back over to the consumer side, in order for a franchisee, beyond, yes, I want to quit my job, yes, I want to see what's out there, now I need to understand that you have a positioning back to the consumer. And if I think about what we just talked about, in my opinion, the sales piece that you have that is beautiful is to restaurant. I'm just going to play in restaurant franchising for a second. But to restaurant franchising, we give your franchisees back their royalty. Because when you're talking about cost of goods dropping 3 to 5%, you're really talking about a full restaurant royalty, which when restaurant volume is so low to begin with, call it 10% of gross,
right? You
just made that franchise restaurant independent by saving them that money. And so to franchisee, you walk in there and say, would you like to stop paying royalty? And they're like, yeah, of course I would. That's what our program's going to do, because we're going to shave off your costs here, which is going to increase your profitability here. Like all of a sudden now you're playing in a category that wins. And then to the franchisee now, swing over to hospitality. Imagine walking into a place and saying, would you like to be done paying your royalty? And they're going to be like, absolutely. And this is your sale. So when you're talking, like I see if I were to buy your brand, one, I'm blowing up the franchise side and I'm playing up. Like I was frustrated with corporate America because I was busting my ass for a salary. All of a sudden you're talking to me. You're in restaurant, some sort of restaurant supply chain management or general manager. You're doing the same thing. You're working nights and weekends. You're smelling like grease, and you're walking home and you're just busting your ass. Like here's what happens if you bust your ass for a return. And then to the consumer, like what's the sales piece? It's like we're gonna save you your royalty if you own that as a division from franchising. So now if I'm taking over your consumer site, I'm doing independent restaurants, what we do, and franchise restaurants, what we do, because now you get in on the corporate side of a franchisor. Why would they not say, yeah, of course we want you find these savings, and we haven't thought about adding this in here, which in turn, from a franchise sales standpoint for Restaurant Brand X, that ends up being a part of their tech stack that they're able to sell back to their franchisees. So very clear for me to see this. Anything connect, and obviously the way that I approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think it's ironically enough, our niche and our focus has always been on the independent restaurants, just because of one, the sales cycle has kind of been easier to target independent restaurant operators. They can make the decision. They're not kind of tied down by corporate and having to escalate up the decision making. And so we've always looked at franchise groups in a similar vein that, hey, it's too difficult to kind of go after them because there's just too much bureaucracy they got to get through to do that. But I think we might have had our blinders on to that opportunity, right? Because the way you put it there, to be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, you can, you save on all your royalties that you're paying back to the franchisor is a huge proposition, because it's probably the biggest complaint they'll have about, as any franchisee will have, is, hey, I hate paying royalties, right? What am I getting for my royalties? So I love that idea. That's a great idea.
Stay on that. So you're 35 locations, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because now and it's going to depend on chain side. So let's play micro emerging, or let's just call it emerging, under 100 units.
Mm-hmm.
100 unit brand still is going to take a shotgun approach to selling franchise. So they might have one in Seattle and one in Florida. Can your 35 go outside of territory to set up the program, or does it require them to be on site?
It currently requires them to be on site. We are experimenting with some what we call a remote program. The challenge, again, with my background in technology, probably much prefer to have just be in the technology space and selling, SaaS solutions. The challenge for this industry, that there's a lot of different tools out there, and they're pretty good tools, but because of everything is based off of the data, if the data collected is off, then it kind of makes everything else meaningless. And
there's a
so
service job there that needs to happen,
and it needs to be done so that, when we've done the remote programs, it's been a challenge to get good, clean data. So you have to, our guys who are, will do this, 3 or 4 restaurants in a day. So they're trained in their experience at collecting data properly. But we have changed the systems now and put in a lot more sort of software check and balances to help, people to count in-house, and then we'll still take care of everything else. Like, we can get access to the point of sale data electronically, the purchase data electronically. The only thing we can't do electronically is we can't physically count the data, right? So if we can train those guys to count, one of their staff, one of our restaurant staff to count, and then we can take that data, run the report, say, hey, look, you've made mistakes here. You got to go back and double check this and triple check this particular area. Then that's also effective.
Yeah.
But it's a newer process we're trying. So it's not kind of the standard service at the moment, but it is something we're branching out into.
Yeah, I don't know that solves it. And I have one other point to make, but hire to own. I don't know that there's another category that really has that ability, but if you think about what the deal value is on a customer, if you got brand X to say, yeah, look, I got 100 locations, I want to bring all 100 on. If you're able to hire to own, to say, hey, in this marketplace, look, we're hiring you first. You don't have the capital to become a franchisee, but we're going to book up your book of business, and some of that's going to go back to sweat equity, or you're paying a higher royalty on this stuff. You'll still keep a bunch of it, but it might be interesting just to play that out, or to go back to your current franchisees and say, guys, what if we wanted to build a national accounts team here, because we have a message to go back to franchise restaurants who would like to participate? It might be interesting to see who would be available to help build out that network. The other thing that I'll say, there was a company we worked with in Chicago, independent restaurant bar company, and they had 12 bars. Mm-hmm. And their head of marketing, super sophisticated guy, and he put metrics in on the bar, very similar to what you've done, but his interesting positioning, because he was head of marketing, he wasn't ops. He put that in place so that he could go back to his CEO on cost savings and take that money and put it back into marketing. And so it's another play to play with, independent restaurant X. We're going to save you 5%. If you put that money back into marketing, then look at what that's going to do for your business. Like, if you don't have the funds to market your business, you can find it in the savings on cost of it. So,
yeah, that's a good idea.
But I love the business model. I think what you have is spectacular. I think simplifying the message to your buyer on both sides would be an interesting play to take it to that next level. So, yeah. Ray, if there was a candidate that was watching this conversation up to this point, any last things you want them to know about the business?
In terms of the right people for this type of business, it is what we've learned over the years is that we've gotten some really good operators, but this is such a relationship and is such a sales based type of business that, the good thing, it's a very low cost, low investment type franchise. But in order to take advantage of that, you've got to get comfortable with getting to know your market, getting out there and talking to people. It's still a very people-based, very relationship-based type of business, because our clients, when you think about it, they put so much trust in us. They give us the keys to their location, to their alarm codes, because we got to get in there early in the morning. They give us access to all their data, and you don't get that type of trust by just kind of rocking up or sending a quick email or a direct mail or something, right? They got to see you in the flesh. You got to shake hands. So it's a great business for people who are comfortable in that type of environment, who want to make a difference, who want to get into a business that can really help small business operators, right? And so you have that kind of energy, you have that type of motivation. It's we're the type of business that will facilitate the opportunity for new people coming into the business, because we're looking for good people.
Oh. Well, Ray, thanks for sharing some of your story. Again, like I'm excited about your business opportunity. Just got to get in front of those right buyers and watch what happens. So
yeah, we're looking to scale. We're looking to grow.
Yeah.
We think there's a huge opportunity there. So, and there's lots of cities and locations available in the US, particularly.
Love it. For Ray, I'm Nick. It's another episode of Meet the Zor.